My name is Myra Summers. I was 41 when my sister suddenly decided she wanted to claim the son she had placed in my arms 19 years earlier. Vanessa was only 16 when she found out she was expecting. My parents fell apart. To them, this was not just a family crisis. It was a threat to their reputation, to Vanessa's future, to the picture-perfect life they had spent years trying to show the world. So they came to me. I was 22, single, and I had never even held a newborn before. But I took that little boy anyway. I raised him on my own. During his first 3 years, I worked 2 jobs. I wrapped his Christmas presents in old newspaper because that was all I could afford. I sat alone through every parent-teacher conference, every school meeting, every moment where 2 parents were supposed to be there. And while I was doing all of that, Vanessa moved to Boston. She finished college. She earned her MBA. She got married twice. And not once did she call to ask how her son was doing. Then, 19 years later, he graduated from high school, and Vanessa walked into that gymnasium holding a cake that said, "Congratulations from your real mom." What happened next brought my mother to tears, made Vanessa's boyfriend walk out, and caused nearly 200 strangers to stand up for a woman they had never met. Before we begin, if you enjoy stories about family, choices, and the moments that reveal who people truly are, take a second to like and subscribe, and leave a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is there. Let me take you back 19 years, to the night my mother called me at 2 in the morning. I grew up in Willow Creek, Ohio, a town of about 11,000 people. It was the kind of place where your neighbors somehow knew your report card before you did, and the cashier at the grocery store would ask about your grandmother's hip like she was part of the family. My sister Vanessa was 6 years younger than me. She was the youngest, the pretty one, the one people noticed. She could walk into a room and make everyone smile without even trying. I was the other daughter, the one who set the table, the one who washed the dishes, the one who drove Vanessa to dance class every Tuesday and Thursday because my mother said it would be good practice for when I had children of my own one day. I loved my sister. I want that understood. I loved her in the complicated way older sisters often do, with annoyance and tenderness wrapped so tightly together that you cannot separate one from the other. Our mother, Rita, had always made one thing clear. Vanessa was delicate. Vanessa needed protecting. Vanessa was the child everyone worried about, and I was the dependable one. I was the one who handled things, the one who did not need much attention because, somehow, I would always figure it out. Our father, Gerald, mostly went along with whatever my mother decided. He was not a harsh man. He was simply absent in the ways that mattered most. He sat at the dinner table, but he disappeared from every conversation that required courage. I was 22 the spring everything changed. I had just finished my bachelor's degree in education at Ohio State. I had been accepted into a master's program with a full scholarship. I had a plan, a future, and a tiny studio apartment with one window that faced a parking lot. I thought it was beautiful because it was mine. Vanessa was 16, a sophomore in high school. She had a boyfriend named Tyler who drove a Mustang and worked at the movie theater. Then one night in March, the house phone rang at 2 in the morning. It was my mother. I drove 40 minutes home in the dark. When I walked into the kitchen, Rita was sitting at the table with a cup of tea she had not touched. Gerald stood near the refrigerator with his arms crossed, staring at the floor. Vanessa was upstairs. I could hear her crying through the ceiling. My mother did not look at me when I sat down. She pushed a piece of paper across the table. It was an ultrasound picture. 4 months along. 4 months. Vanessa had known for 4 months and had told no one. My mother's first words were not about Vanessa, not about the baby, not about Tyler, who had already stopped answering Vanessa's calls. The first thing she said was, "The neighbors cannot know." I still remember the sound of the clock on the wall. It was 11 minutes past 2. Her tea was going cold. My father cleared his throat, but he said nothing. Then Rita started explaining the options like she was planning a military operation. There was outside adoption, but that meant forms, meetings, records, and people asking questions. Vanessa could keep the baby, but Rita refused to have her 16-year-old daughter raising a child under her roof. "It would destroy everything we've built," she said. And the way she said it, you would have thought she was talking about something grand and noble, not a front lawn, a clean reputation, and what the neighbors whispered on Sunday mornings. Then my mother stood up, walked to the hall closet and came back holding a small yellow blanket folded into a neat square. It was a baby blanket. Cotton, faded around the edges. "This was yours," she told me, "from when you were born." I held it in my hands. It was soft and thin from 22 years in storage. It smelled like cedar and dust. Then Rita sat back down and looked me in the eyes for the first time since I had arrived. "You have to help," she said. "You're her sister." By the next morning, she made the choice painfully clear. If I did not take the baby, they would call an adoption agency by Friday. The baby would be placed with people we had never met. Vanessa would return to school, and our family would pretend none of it had ever happened. So I asked the only question that actually mattered. "What about Vanessa? Does she want to keep the baby?" My mother waved her hand as if I had asked something unimportant. "Vanessa is a child," Rita said. "She doesn't know what she wants." Gerald nodded, because that was what Gerald did. He nodded, stayed quiet, and let my mother decide the shape of everyone's life. I looked over at Vanessa. She had come downstairs and was sitting on the couch with her knees pulled tight against her chest. She wore a hoodie far too big for her, and her mascara had smudged beneath her eyes. She looked exactly like what she was, a frightened 16-year-old girl who did not understand what was happening to her life. "Vanessa," I said gently, "what do you want?" She looked at Rita first, then at me, then down at the floor. "I want it to go away," she whispered. Rita pointed at me as if that settled everything. "There, you heard her. She has school. She has her whole life ahead of her. She has school. Remember those words. Because 19 years later, on the most painful day of my life, I would hear them again in a gymnasium filled with 200 people, and that time, they would mean something completely different." I drove back to my apartment that night with the yellow blanket sitting on the passenger seat beside me. I had not said yes, but I had not said no either. And in my family, silence was usually treated as permission. 2 weeks later, I called my mother and told her I would do it. The next morning, I withdrew from my master's program. Dylan was born on July 14th at 3:17 in the afternoon. He weighed 6 pounds, 9 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and a cry loud enough to fill the entire room. I was there when he arrived. Vanessa was there too, of course, because she was the one bringing him into the world. Rita stood near the door with her arms folded, watching the clock like she had somewhere more important to be. Gerald waited in the hallway, probably staring at the floor like always. It took 11 hours. And I will say this for Vanessa. She was brave. She did not complain. She held the railing, followed the nurse's instructions, breathed when they told her to breathe, and pushed when they told her to push. She was 16 years old, and her body was doing something enormous, something terrifying, something life-changing. I watched her face through every hard moment and kept thinking the same thing. She is so young. When Dylan finally arrived, the nurse cleaned him, wrapped him, and lifted him carefully. "Who wants to hold him first?" There were 3 of us in that room. Vanessa turned her face toward the wall. Rita did not move. The nurse looked at me. So I took him. 6 pounds? 9 ounces. His eyes were closed, his tiny fist wrapped around my index finger, and just like that, he stopped crying. It was as if he had been waiting for the right arms to find him. Then the nurse asked, "Who's taking him home?" No one answered. It was the longest silence I had ever heard. Finally, I said, "I am." 3 days later, I carried Dylan into my 1-bedroom apartment on East Willow Street. I had a crib borrowed from a coworker, a box of diapers from the dollar store, and the yellow blanket from my mother's closet. That first night, I wrapped him in it. The same blanket that had once wrapped me 22 years earlier. It barely covered him, but it was soft, it was warm, and somehow, it already felt like hours. That first year nearly broke me. Dylan had colic. Every night, from 8 until midnight, he cried for hours. I walked in circles around that little apartment, holding him against my chest, humming pieces of songs I barely remembered from childhood. I watched the clock and begged the minutes to move faster. I worked as a teaching assistant at Willow Creek Elementary from 7:45 in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon. Then I came home to an infant who needed everything I had left. I learned how to survive on 4 hours of sleep. I learned how to eat while standing. I learned how to shower in less than 3 minutes, because 3 minutes was exactly how long Dylan would tolerate sitting in his bouncy chair. One night, around 11, after Dylan had been crying for 3 straight hours, I called my mother. I was standing in the kitchen wearing sweatpants and a shirt stained with formula. Dylan was crying. I was crying too. "Mom," I said, "I need help. Just for one night. Please." Rita's voice stayed calm. "You chose this, Myra. You're an adult. Figure it out." Then she hung up. Meanwhile, Vanessa moved to Boston for college that August. She had been accepted into a small private school, paid for with scholarships and my parents' savings, the same savings they said could not be used for Dylan's doctor visits when I asked. In October, a family court in Franklin County granted me legal guardianship of Dylan. The process itself was simple on paper. Vanessa signed the voluntary forms from Boston by fax during rush week, just like that. A few signatures, a few pages, and the decision that shaped the rest of my life was sealed. I kept those papers in a small fireproof safe under my bed, right beside the yellow blanket, beside Dylan's hospital bracelet, beside a photo of him sleeping on my chest when he was 4 days old, his mouth slightly open, his tiny fist curled against me, peaceful for the first time since he had come into the world. He was mine now, legally, officially, completely. Let me show you the next 5 years the way I remember them, in little moments that never left me. Dylan at 1, taking his first steps from the coffee table to the couch, 3 feet of open space, arms stretched out, smiling like he had just climbed a mountain. I recorded it on an old flip phone that could barely hold 30 seconds of video. I still have that video. Dylan at 2, saying his first word, "Ma." Not mama, not mommy, just ma. Short and certain, like he had already figured out the most important word in his life and did not need to add anything else. Dylan at 3, when I started working part-time at Willow Creek Elementary in the mornings. A neighbor named Patty watched him for $40 a week. Patty had 6 grandchildren and the patience of a mountain. Dylan adored her. Dylan at 4, reading everything he could find, not just letters, words, full sentences. One morning, he read the cereal box at breakfast and asked me what riboflavin meant. I had to look it up. Dylan at 5 on his first day of kindergarten. I stood outside the school gates for 15 minutes after he went inside, just in case he needed me. He did not look back. He walked straight in with his Spider-Man backpack, brave and excited, as if he had been waiting his whole life for that moment. I was so proud of him, and it hurt so much at the same time that I sat in my car afterward and cried. During those 5 years, no one from the Summers family came to visit. Not once. No Christmas gifts, no birthday cards, no surprise calls asking to hear his little voice. Rita called now and then to ask how I was managing, but never to offer help. Gerald sent a check for $50 on Dylan's 3rd birthday. No note, just the check. That Christmas morning, when Dylan was 3, it was just the 2 of us. I wrapped his presents in newspaper because I could not afford wrapping paper. He did not care. He was 3. He thought the comics page was part of the surprise. When Dylan was 6, Vanessa called. It was a Tuesday evening. I was making spaghetti, and Dylan was sitting at the table drawing a dinosaur eating a spaceship. The phone rang, and the caller ID showed a Boston area code. I almost did not answer because I thought it was a sales call. "Myra, it's Vanessa." Her voice sounded different, deeper, smoother, like she had learned how to sound polished, how to sound grown. She did not ask about Dylan, not how he was doing in school, not what he liked, not whether he still had colic or had outgrown it years before. She did not ask one single question about him. She asked about a car. A 2003 Toyota Camry she had left in our parents' garage 6 years earlier. She wanted to know if it was still there because she needed to sell it. "I'm graduating next spring," she said, "and I need money for my apartment deposit." I told her the car was probably still in the garage. She said she would call Rita and arrange it. Then she said, "Thanks, bye," and hung up. 42 seconds. I checked afterward because I could not believe that was the entire conversation. Later that evening, Rita called. "Your sister is graduating next spring," she said. "Top of her class, business and marketing. Do not make things difficult for her." "I'm not making anything difficult for anyone," I said. "I'm making spaghetti." Vanessa graduated summa cum laude from Emerson the following May. Rita drove to Boston for the ceremony. Gerald went too. They had Vanessa's graduation photo framed and hung in the living room, professionally matted, 18 by 24. Dylan's first day of school photo was on my refrigerator, held up by a ladybug magnet. It was not in their house at all. When Dylan was 8, 2 things happened that changed the direction of my life. First, Willow Creek High School offered me a full-time position as a special education aide, with a path to coordinator if I finished my master's degree. The salary was $43,000 a year with benefits. For a single mother who had been living on teaching assistant wages and carefully planned grocery trips, that number felt enormous. The second thing happened while I was washing dishes. Dylan was standing nearby, quiet in the way children get when a serious question has been sitting inside them for a long time. Then he asked me, "Aunt Myra, how come I don't have a mom and dad like the other kids?" My hands stopped moving. The water kept running. A plate slipped from my hand and clinked against the bottom of the sink. Dylan was sitting at the kitchen table behind me, with his homework spread out in front of him and a pencil in his hand. He was looking at me with those dark, serious eyes of his, the kind of eyes that already noticed too much for an 8-year-old. I turned off the water, dried my hands, and sat down across from him. "Dylan," I said, "I love you more than anything in this world. Your birth mother cares about you too in her own way, but I am the one who is here, and I am the one who will always be here." He watched my face carefully, 8 years old and already reading people like open books. "I know," he said. "I just wanted to call you Mom instead of Aunt Myra. Is that okay?" I had not let myself truly fall apart in years. Not when Rita refused to help me. Not when Vanessa called about an old car instead of asking about her son. Not when Christmas after Christmas passed without a card, a gift, or even a phone call from anyone in the family. But when that little boy asked for permission to call me Mom, something inside me broke open. He got up from his chair, walked around the table, and wrapped his arms around me. Small arms, tight grip. He smelled like pencil shavings and grape juice. "It's okay, Mom," he said. Mom, the first time. That night, after Dylan went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table for a long time. I thought about calling Rita. I thought about telling her, "Your grandson just called me Mom." It was the happiest and saddest moment of my life, and I need someone to tell me I'm doing this right. But I did not call, because I already knew what she would say. She would tell me not to confuse Dylan. She would remind me that Vanessa was his real mother. She would tell me I was crossing a line, so instead I went to my bedroom, opened the small fireproof safe under my bed, and took out the guardianship papers. I read them under the soft light of my bedside lamp. My name was printed on every page: Myra Lynn Summers, legal guardian, Vanessa Marie Summers, signature of biological mother, relinquishing all custodial rights, notarized, stamped, filed with Franklin County. Under those papers was the yellow blanket. I had kept it folded in the safe ever since Dylan outgrew it at 5. Before that, he carried it everywhere, to the grocery store, to bed. Once, he even tried to bring it into the bathtub. It was worn at the corners and missing pieces of its original stitching. It smelled faintly of baby shampoo and all the years we had survived together. I was still holding it when I heard a soft knock on my door. Dylan stood there in his dinosaur pajamas. "Mom, I can't sleep." "Me neither," I said. He climbed into my bed and noticed the blanket in my hands. "That's my baby blanket," he said. He had not seen it in 3 years. "It was mine first," I told him, "before it was yours." He took it gently and studied the frayed edges. Then he folded it with surprising care for an 8-year-old and placed it back inside the safe. "We should keep it safe," he said. "It's important." It was more important than he could possibly understand. I told Dylan the whole truth when he was 13. We were sitting on the porch on a quiet Sunday afternoon. For months he had been asking questions. Not direct questions at first, but the kind that circle closer and closer to the thing they really want to know. Why did Grandma Rita always introduce him as Vanessa's son? Why were there no baby pictures of him in the family albums at my parents' house? Why had he never met Tyler? So I told him. I told him about the phone call at 2 in the morning. I told him about Rita's ultimatum, the yellow blanket, and the 40-minute drive home in the dark. I told him Vanessa had been 16, frightened, and not ready for the life suddenly placed in front of her. I told him the facts, the legal papers, the choices that were made, the years that passed without a visit, without a letter, without a call. I did not add judgment. I did not tell him Vanessa was a terrible person. I did not tell him Rita was wrong. I simply told him what happened in the order it happened. Dylan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he stood up, went inside, and closed his bedroom door. He did not come out for 2 days. On the third morning, he appeared at the kitchen table, already dressed for school. I had made scrambled eggs. He sat down, picked up his fork, and ate 3 bites. Then he said, "I'm not angry at her." "At Vanessa?" I asked. "At any of them," he said. "I'm just sad for her. She missed everything." Then he went to school, and I sat at that table for another 20 minutes, holding a spatula, trying to breathe normally. Dylan did not stop calling me Mom. He did not ask to meet Vanessa. He did not ask to call Rita or Gerald. He just kept being 13. Awkward. Brilliant. Growing too fast that summer. And still, completely, my son. While I was raising Dylan, Vanessa was building a life that looked impressive from the outside. She earned her MBA from Northwestern. By 28, she was a marketing director at a boutique agency in Chicago. She had a corner office, a company car, and the kind of career that looked perfect in professional photos and polished online profiles. She also collected marriages. The first lasted 2 years. His name was Brett. I never met him. The second lasted 14 months. His name was Marco. I never met him either. Each time Vanessa's marriage ended, Rita called me, not to ask about Dylan, not to hear that Vanessa's son had done well on a math test, not to learn that he had made the honor roll the 4th time in a row. She called to warn me not to make Vanessa's life harder. "Your sister is going through a difficult time," Rita said after the second divorce. "She does not need judgment from anyone right now." "I haven't spoken to Vanessa in 3 years," I told her. "Good," she said. "Keep it that way. Let her heal." My sister married twice, divorced twice, and through all of it she never sent Dylan a birthday card. Every July 14th came and went. Year after year, the mailbox stayed empty. No card, no call, no message. The post office knew my address. Vanessa simply chose not to use it. Meanwhile, I finished my master's degree. It took me 4 years of night classes, full-time work, and raising Dylan at the same time. I graduated when he was 8. No one from my family came to that ceremony either. Claire Reeves, a colleague who had become my closest friend, sat in the 3rd row and cheered loud enough for an entire family. The next year, I became the special education coordinator at Willow Creek High School. No one called to congratulate me. But by then, I had stopped waiting for that call. I think I stopped somewhere around year 4. The Thanksgiving when Dylan was 15 was the first time I brought him to my parents' house in years. I still do not know why I agreed to go. Maybe I thought something had changed. Maybe I wanted Dylan to experience a big family holiday at least once, or maybe I was tired of pretending the Summers family did not exist. We drove 40 minutes to Willow Creek. Dylan wore a button-down shirt he had picked out himself. He was nervous. I could tell because he kept adjusting his collar in the passenger side mirror. The house was full when we arrived. Rita had invited cousins, an aunt, and 2 neighbors. The table was set for 14. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole. A normal Thanksgiving, the kind families pretend they always have. Rita met us at the door. She hugged Dylan briefly, in that careful, performative way people do when they know others are watching. Then she led him into the dining room and introduced him to a cousin he had never met. "This is Vanessa's son, Dylan. Not Myra's son, not our grandson, not the boy Myra has raised on her own for 15 years, not even simply Dylan, just Vanessa's son." Under the table, Dylan's hand found mine. He squeezed. 15 years old, and he understood the truth of that room better than most of the adults sitting in it. Gerald carved the turkey. Rita poured the wine. Everyone passed dishes and made polite conversation. No one asked Dylan about school. No one asked about his grades. No one mentioned the science fair project that had won 2nd place at the state level. No one asked me anything at all. After dessert, Rita cornered me in the kitchen while loading the dishwasher. "It was nice of you to bring him," she said. "Vanessa would be glad to know he's doing well." "Then maybe Vanessa should ask him herself," I said. Rita gave me the look, the one that meant I was being difficult again. We drove home in silence. Dylan was the first to speak. "I don't need to go back there, Mom." And just like that, I knew we wouldn't. Dylan's junior year was when I realized he was not just smart. He was extraordinary, straight A's since freshman year, advanced classes stacked one after another, debate team captain, volunteer tutor at the community center every Saturday morning. His teachers stopped me in the hallway and used words like gifted, exceptional, and early college admission. I had not been thinking that far ahead. I had mostly been focused on making sure he ate dinner, had clean clothes, got enough sleep, and knew he was loved. Everything else, the grades, the ambition, the quiet discipline, that was Dylan. In October, his college counselor called me in for a meeting. "Dylan is on track to be valedictorian," she said, "and his essay is one of the strongest I've read in 20 years. I asked what it was about. She slid a printed copy across the desk. The title was centered at the top in plain 12-point Times New Roman, "The Woman Who Chose Me." I read it in the school parking lot because I could not read it in front of another person. I sat in my Honda with the engine off and the windows rolled up, and I read every word. He wrote about the night I brought him home from the hospital, about the yellow blanket, about learning to ride a bike in the parking lot of our apartment complex because we did not have a driveway, about Christmas mornings with presents wrapped in newspaper, about the night he asked if he could call me Mom, and how I cried. He wrote, "Biology may explain where someone begins, but love is what decides who stays. My mother made that choice every day for 19 years, and she never once asked to be praised for it." I sat in that car for 20 minutes before I could make myself drive. The parking lot slowly emptied around me. The sun slipped lower. I held that essay against the steering wheel and let myself feel every year I had carried quietly, every sleepless night, every school meeting, every birthday, every hard choice, every moment no one else saw. 2 months before graduation, Dylan showed me the group chat. He came home from school on a Wednesday and placed his phone on the kitchen counter, screen facing up. "Mom," he said, "you need to see this." It was a family group text. Rita, Gerald, Vanessa, Aunt Patrice, Uncle Dale. Someone had added Dylan by mistake. Probably Rita, who had never been especially good with her phone, even on her best days. The messages went back 2 years. I sat at the kitchen table and scrolled while Dylan stood near the window with his arms crossed, watching me carefully. 14 months earlier, Rita had written, "When Vanessa is ready, she'll take Dylan back. Myra is just keeping him for now." 3 days later, Vanessa had replied, "Give me a couple more years. I'm finally getting my life together." Gerald had responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Aunt Patrice had written, "Poor Vanessa. She's been through so much." Then Uncle Dale added, "Myra should be grateful she got to have a child at all." I read every message twice. My hands stayed steady because they had to. The kitchen was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator. 2 years. For 2 years, my family had been discussing my son as if he were something borrowed, something waiting to be returned, as if I had only been holding his place until Vanessa decided she was ready to step into a life she had ignored. I set the phone down and looked at Dylan. "Why didn't you show me this sooner?" "Because I didn't want you to lose them," he said, "even though they don't deserve you." 17 years old, standing in my kitchen, trying to protect me from the people who should have protected both of us. I did not call Rita. I did not call Vanessa. I did not raise my voice. I did not break down. I did not throw anything across the room. I went to my bedroom, opened the fireproof safe, and checked the guardianship papers, every page, every signature, every notarized stamp. Then I closed the safe and went back to making dinner. If you have ever been the person everyone depends on but no one thanks, if you have ever been the reliable one while someone else received all the attention, then you know exactly what that moment feels like. Subscribe and stay with me because what happened at graduation is something I still can hardly believe Dylan had the courage to do. That night after dinner, Dylan and I sat together on the porch. "Why didn't you tell me when you first saw the messages?" I asked again. He stayed quiet for a while. The sound of crickets filled the space between us. "Because you would have confronted Grandma," he said, "and then she would have pushed you away completely. And even though she doesn't treat you right, I know you still love her. I didn't want to be the reason you lost your mother." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say Rita had given up the right to be treated like my mother years ago. But the truth was not that simple. It rarely is when family is involved. "Dylan," I said, "you and I are a family. We have been a family since the day I brought you home. Whatever they think, whatever they say, whatever they believe they are planning, it does not change what is legally true or what is actually true. You are my son." He nodded. "I know," he said. "I've always known." I did not confront anyone. I did not forward the screenshots. I did not put anything online. I did not do any of the dramatic things people might expect. What I did was quieter. I opened the fireproof safe under my bed and checked every document. The guardianship papers were valid. The voluntary relinquishment forms were signed and notarized. The school enrollment records all had my name on them. Every emergency contact form for 19 years listed me. Every medical consent form, from his first vaccination onward, carried my signature. Then I found the yellow blanket folded in the corner of the safe. Faded, frayed, soft with age, still carrying a faint scent I could no longer name. I held it for a moment. Then I placed it back inside and closed the safe. If they wanted to challenge what Dylan and I had built, the proof was ready. But I was not going to be the one to start it. 6 weeks before graduation, Rita called with news. She did not ask about Dylan being named valedictorian. She did not ask about the ceremony. She did not ask if there was anything she should bring or whether Dylan was excited. She called to talk about Vanessa. "Your sister has met someone," Rita said, with the excitement of someone announcing a prize. "His name is Harrison Whitfield. He works in real estate. Very successful, very traditional. He wants a family, Myra, a real family." I leaned against the kitchen counter and listened. "Vanessa told him about Dylan," Rita continued, "about how complicated everything was, about how the family situation forced her to make a difficult choice." "What choice was that?" I asked. "You know what I mean," she said. "No," I replied. "Tell me." Rita paused. "The choice to let you help." Let you help. That was how my mother described 19 years of raising a child alone. Not sacrifice, not motherhood, not the life I had built day after day with Dylan, just helping. "Harrison is very touched," Rita continued. "He thinks Vanessa is brave. He wants to meet Dylan. This could be Vanessa's chance, Myra. Her chance to finally have everything she deserves. Her chance, not Dylan's chance to know his biological mother, not a chance for our family to tell the truth. Not a chance for anyone to finally acknowledge what I had done. Vanessa's chance. That was how my mother saw my son's graduation. The child I had raised for 19 years was about to walk across a stage, and somehow Rita had turned it into an opportunity for Vanessa. "Harrison doesn't know the full story, does he?" I asked. "He knows what he needs to know." "He doesn't know she signed away her rights by fax during rush week." There was silence. Then Rita said, "Do not ruin this for her." I hung up. Then I went outside and sat on the porch steps for half an hour, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. Fireflies moved through the yard. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower hummed. Dylan came outside with 2 glasses of water and sat beside me. "Grandma called?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "about Aunt Vanessa. She's not my aunt." "I know." He looked out at the street. "But it's easier," he said. 3 weeks later, Dylan walked into the kitchen holding his phone. "She messaged me." I was sitting at the table grading papers, a red pen in my hand and a stack of IEP reports beside me. He turned the screen toward me. It was an Instagram direct message from an account with a polished professional headshot and 4,000 followers. "Hey, handsome. I know this is out of nowhere, but I'm your bio mom. I've thought about you every single day. I would love to meet you. I'm coming to town soon." Then 3 heart emojis and a smiling face. I read it twice. I set down my red pen and looked at Dylan. He was watching me the way he always did when something important happened. Quietly, carefully, waiting to see how I reacted before deciding how he felt. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I don't know," he said. "What should I do?" "That is your decision, Dylan." Not mine. He sat down and thought about it for 2 full minutes. Then he typed a reply. Short, polite, distant. Hi, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate you thinking of me. No mom, no heart emojis, no I would love to meet you too. Just a calm acknowledgement that her message had been received. Vanessa replied within 90 seconds. Can't wait to see you at graduation. I'm bringing someone special I want you to meet. Dylan read it, locked his phone, and placed it face down on the table. I thought about Vanessa at 16, signing papers by fax from Boston, and Vanessa at 35, typing, I've thought about you every single day, followed by 3 heart emojis. Same person, same avoidance, different presentation. She has school. I've thought about you every single day. 2 sentences, 19 years apart. At least the first one had been honest. 6 weeks before graduation, the school made it official. Dylan Summers, valedictorian, class of 2026. I got the call from the principal's office on a Tuesday morning between 2nd and 3rd period. I was in the middle of an IEP meeting for a student with dyslexia, so I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. Principal Herricks told me my son had the highest GPA in a class of 312 students. He'll give the valedictorian address at the ceremony, she said. 5 to 7 minutes. He can choose his own topic. I thanked her, ended the call, and leaned against the hallway wall for a moment. A sophomore walked by and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine, but I was more than fine. That evening, I told Dylan. He smiled that quiet, contained smile of his, a smile he had not inherited from anyone in the Summers family. It belonged entirely to him. I already started writing the speech, he said. Can I read it? Not yet, he said. You'll hear it at the ceremony. For the next 6 weeks, I heard him practicing behind his closed bedroom door, reading out loud, pausing, starting again. Sometimes the silence lasted 5 or 10 minutes, and I knew he was changing a line, searching for the exact words. I bought a new dress for the first time in 3 years. Claire helped me choose it. Navy blue. Simple. Comfortable enough to sit in a plastic chair for 2 hours. Claire said I looked like I was going to a state dinner. I told her I was going to something better. Dylan ironed his own shirt. He had been ironing his own shirt since he was 14. I taught him, though truthfully, he became better at it than I ever was. 2 weeks passed, then 1 week, then 3 days. The ceremony was getting closer, and so was Vanessa. The phone call came on a Thursday evening, 9 days before graduation. Rita's number. I almost let it ring. Almost. Vanessa will be at the ceremony, Rita said. No hello, no small talk. She's bringing Harrison. They're flying in from Chicago. Fine, I said. Do not make a scene, Myra. I have never made a scene in my life. Good, she said, because this is an important day for Vanessa. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. An important day for Vanessa. Not for Dylan, the one graduating. Not for me, the one who had helped him with homework, packed his lunches, signed every form, and sat through every school meeting for 13 years. For Vanessa, the woman flying in with a new boyfriend to play the part of mother in front of an audience. She's bringing a cake, Rita added. Something special to celebrate. That's nice, I said, because there was nothing else I could say. After I hung up, I went out to the porch and sat there alone. It was May. The air smelled like freshly cut grass and magnolia blossoms. Somewhere down the street, a neighbor's sprinkler clicked in a steady rhythm. 15 minutes later, Dylan came outside carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. He sat beside me, and for a while, neither of us spoke. She's coming, I finally said. I know. With Harrison. I figured. Are you okay with that? He set his glass on the porch railing and looked at me with those dark, calm eyes that had always seen more than I expected. Mom, he said, I have been okay for a long time. I was okay when I was 8 and asked to call you Mom. I was okay when I was 13 and you told me the truth. I was okay when I saw that group chat, and I'm okay now. Then he stood, squeezed my shoulder, and added, She can bring whoever she wants. She can bring a cake, a banner, and an entire marching band. It still won't change anything. Then he went back inside. I stayed on the porch until the sun disappeared. On graduation morning, I woke up at 5:30 and could not fall back asleep. So I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. Dylan's cap and gown were hanging on the back of the dining room chair, navy blue with a gold tassel. I had picked them up from the school office 3 days earlier and pressed them carefully with the iron on low heat, placing a damp cloth between the fabric and the iron, just the way my mother had taught me when I was 10. Dylan came downstairs at 7, freshly showered and shaved. He had been shaving for 2 years, even though there was barely anything there yet. He wore a white button-down shirt and dark slacks. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Hungry," he said. So I made eggs, toast, and orange juice. We ate in a silence that felt comfortable. Morning light came through the kitchen window and caught the salt shaker, sending a tiny rainbow across the table. "Can I read the speech?" I asked one last time. "You'll hear it," he said, "from the 3rd row." After breakfast, he went upstairs to finish getting ready. I washed the dishes, dried them, and put them away. Then I went to get dressed. When I came back downstairs, Dylan was standing in the hallway, adjusting his cap in the mirror. That was when I noticed what he had in his hand. Small, yellow, carefully folded. The blanket. The yellow baby blanket from 19 years ago, faded, frayed, and missing some of its stitching. He tucked it into the inside pocket of his vest. He saw me watching him in the mirror and held my eyes. "For good luck," he said. Then he smiled. I did not ask anything else. I picked up my keys. Claire was meeting us at the school. The gymnasium was 20 minutes away, but that morning it felt like we were driving toward something much bigger. The gymnasium at Willow Creek High School holds 400 people. That day, every seat was filled. There were rows of plastic chairs across the gym floor, a small stage at the front, a podium, a microphone, and a banner that read, "Class of 2026. The school orchestra was tuning in the corner. 3 violins, a cello, 2 flutes, and 1 kid with a tuba who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Claire and I found seats in the 3rd row on the left side, close enough to see the podium, close enough to see Dylan when he crossed the stage. I smoothed my dress, placed my purse under my chair, and folded my hands in my lap. Then the double doors at the back of the gym opened. Vanessa walked in like she was arriving at a gala. Emerald green wrap dress, auburn hair falling in loose waves past her shoulders, heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor, a smile wide enough to reach the stage. Harrison walked beside her in a gray suit, wearing a silver watch and the composed expression of a man used to being noticed. His salt-and-pepper hair was perfectly combed, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who entered rooms expecting them to adjust around him. Behind them came Rita and Gerald. Rita wore a floral blouse and the lipstick she only brought out for special occasions. Gerald wore a tie that did not match his shirt, and in Rita's hands, balanced on a plastic tray with a paper doily underneath, was a cake. White frosting, pink lettering, the kind of cake you order from a grocery store bakery the day before. The words on it read, "Congratulations from your real mom." 200 people were in that room. Families were finding their seats. Students were lining up in the hallway, and my mother was walking down the center aisle carrying a cake that said my son belonged to someone else. I did not move. I did not speak. Claire reached over and took my hand. Before the ceremony even started, Vanessa made her move. She walked straight toward the staging area where the graduates were lining up. No one stopped her. She smiled at the parent volunteer near the door and said, "I'm Dylan Summers's mother." And technically, biologically, she was not lying. I watched from my seat as she found Dylan in the line. She hugged him with both arms, making the moment big enough for everyone nearby to see. Dylan stood stiffly. His arms stayed at his sides. Harrison stayed a few steps behind, observing everything. Rita was 3 rows behind me, smiling proudly with that cake balanced on her lap. Then Vanessa turned. She walked toward me, heels clicking, smile still fixed in place. She stopped at the end of my row and leaned close enough for the people behind us to hear. "Myra," she said, "thank you so much for taking care of my son all these years. You've been an incredible babysitter." One friend sat in the 3rd row and cheered loud enough for an entire family. Claire gripped my hand so tightly that my fingers went numb. "She helped me with homework every night for 13 years, Dylan continued. "She taught me how to cook, how to do laundry, how to shake someone's hand firmly and look them in the eye. She taught me how to iron a shirt, change a tire, and write a thank you note by hand. She came to every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every awards ceremony. She never missed a single one. Vanessa was no longer smiling. Her phone was still recording, but her hand had slowly dropped into her lap. She stared at Dylan with an expression I had never seen on her face before. First confusion, then understanding, then panic. Dylan looked straight at me. Third row, left side. "She is not the woman who gave birth to me," he said, "but she is the woman who chose me every single day for 19 years. She did it without asking for anything back, without complaining, without walking away." His voice stayed steady. His hands did not shake. He stood at that podium with the kind of calm that can only come from being raised by someone who had spent a lifetime staying calm when everything around her was unfair. "Her name is Myra Summers," he said. "She is my mother." The gymnasium burst into applause. 200 people clapped. Some stood. A few wiped their eyes. Claire was openly crying beside me. The orchestra teacher in the corner dabbed her face with a program. Principal Herricks, standing near the steps of the stage, pressed one hand over her heart. I could not move. I sat there in my plastic chair with tears running down my face, my hands folded in my lap exactly where they had been for the past 45 minutes. Except now, they were shaking. Vanessa sat 2 rows ahead of me. She had stopped clapping. Her phone was still in her lap, recording the ceiling. Harrison looked at her, then at me, then at Dylan standing on the stage, then back at Vanessa. Rita sat at the end of her row with the cake still balanced on her lap. "Congratulations from your real mom." The pink letters faced outward, visible to everyone around her. Only now, those words meant something very different, because 200 people had just heard Dylan Summers say who his real mother was, and it was not the woman named on the cake. I looked at my son on that stage. He looked back at me and mouthed 2 words only I could see. "Thank you." If you are still here, then you already know this is not just a graduation story. It is a story about who truly earns the name Mom. If you have ever held someone together when no one was watching, this story is for you. Like, subscribe, and stay with me. The ceremony ended. Families poured out onto the grass. Graduates hugged their classmates. Cameras flashed. The afternoon sun was warm, and the air smelled like freshly cut lawn and too much cologne. I was standing near the oak tree by the parking lot when Vanessa found me. She walked toward me quickly, her heels sinking into the grass, mascara smudged at the corners of her eyes. Harrison followed behind her with his hands in his pockets and his mouth pressed into a hard line. "What was that?" Vanessa asked. Her voice was sharp enough that a small group of nearby parents turned to look. "What did you tell him to say?" "I didn't tell him anything," I said. "You coached him," she said. "You made him think that way about me." Then Dylan appeared behind her, still wearing his cap and gown, his diploma in one hand. "Nobody coached me," he said. His voice was calm, quiet, the voice of someone who had thought about this moment for a long time. "I wrote that speech myself." Vanessa turned toward him. "Baby, I'm your mother. I gave birth to you. I carried you for 9 months." "And then you signed a piece of paper and faxed it from a sorority house," Dylan said. "During rush week." Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "Grandma told me once that you had to leave because you had school," Dylan continued. "And you did leave, for 19 years. You went to school, built a career, got married twice, moved to Chicago, and lived your life. That is your choice. But you do not get to walk into my graduation with a cake that says, 'Real Mom,' and pretend those 19 years never happened." Then he looked at Rita, who stood about 10 feet away, still holding the cake. "And Grandma, you said today was Vanessa's chance, but this is my graduation, not her audition." Harrison stepped forward. He had stayed quiet through the whole exchange, watching everything with the focused attention of a man who understood when a story did not quite add up. "Vanessa," he said. His voice was low and controlled. "You told me the family situation was complicated. You told me you were forced to give him up. That was the word you used. Forced." Vanessa wiped under her eyes. "Harrison, it was complicated. Did you sign away your parental rights voluntarily?" "I was 16. "Did you sign voluntarily?" The people around us had stopped pretending not to listen. A parent lowered their camera. 2 graduates nearby turned toward us. Vanessa looked at Rita, searching for help. Rita stepped forward and reached for Harrison's arm. "You do not understand our family." Harrison pulled his arm away. Then he looked at me. really looked at me for the first time. "You raised him from birth?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "By yourself?" "Yes." He turned back to Vanessa. His jaw tightened. Something in his eyes shifted. Whatever warmth had been there before was gone now, replaced by something cold and exact. He did not say another word to her. He straightened his jacket, adjusted his watch, and walked across the grass toward the parking lot. A moment later, I heard his car start. It had that smooth, expensive sound. I watched it pull out of the lot, past the school sign, past the gymnasium, and down the road toward the highway. Vanessa stood in the middle of the lawn in her emerald dress, sunlight catching in her auburn hair, watching the one man who had made her want to play the role of mother drive away because he had just learned the truth. The cake sat on the grass where Rita had placed it. No one had touched it. No one ever would. In the silence after Harrison left, something changed in Rita's face. She was looking at Dylan, not at Vanessa, not at me. At Dylan, standing there in his cap and gown, diploma in hand, the yellow tassel brushing his shoulder. Her grandson, the baby she had handed over to me 19 years earlier with a yellow blanket and an ultimatum. Her eyes filled, her lower lip trembled. For one brief moment, maybe 3 seconds, maybe 5, I saw something on my mother's face I had never seen before. Regret. Real, unguarded regret. She opened her mouth and I thought, this is it. This is the moment she says she is sorry. This is the moment she admits what she did. This is the moment 19 years of silence finally breaks and something honest comes through. "Myra," she said. I waited. "If you hadn't turned him against his own mother, none of this would have happened." And just like that, the moment vanished. The wetness in her eyes disappeared. Her trembling mouth hardened into a straight line. Whatever regret had been there, if it had truly been regret at all, folded itself back into the wall of certainty Rita had lived behind for as long as I could remember. Gerald stood behind her, quiet as always, staring at the grass. He had not said one word since he arrived. Dylan looked at Rita. His expression was not angry, not cruel, just patient, the way you look at someone who still cannot hear you, no matter how clearly you speak. "Grandma," he said, "no one turned me against anyone. I'm 19 years old. I have eyes. I have ears. And I have 19 years of memories." He paused. "Do you know how many of those memories include you? 7 Thanksgivings, 3 Christmases, and 1 birthday card. That's it." Then he looked toward me. "Do you know how many include Mom?" He gestured in my direction. "All of them. Every single one. She is in every memory I have because she was there." Rita had no answer, because there was no answer. Then Dylan turned to Vanessa. She was standing a few feet away, mascara streaked beneath her eyes, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "I'm not trying to hurt you," he said. "I need you to understand that. I'm not angry. I'm not trying to punish you, but you need to hear something." He stepped a little closer. "If you want to be part of my life, you can be. I would like that. But you have to begin from right now. Not from a cake, not from a speech. Not from an Instagram post calling me your son and your pride when you don't know my GPA, my best friend's name, or what I'm allergic to." Vanessa blinked. "What are you allergic to?" "Tree nuts," Dylan said, "since I was 4. Mom figured it out after I had a reaction at a birthday party. She drove me to the emergency room, held me in the waiting area for 4 hours, and sat there with a juice box in her hand, praying I would be okay." Then he reached into the inside pocket of his vest and pulled out something small, yellow and faded. The blanket. The baby blanket from 19 years ago. The one that had wrapped me when I was a newborn. The one that had wrapped him the night I brought him home. The one that had stayed inside a fireproof safe under my bed for the last 14 years. He unfolded it and held it up for a moment. Then he walked over to me, took my hand, and placed the blanket in my palm. "This is yours, Mom," he said. "It was always yours." I held it, thin as tissue, soft as memory, frayed at every edge. It smelled like cedar, baby shampoo, and 18 years of being someone's whole world. I could not speak. There was nothing left for me to say. My son had already said everything. Claire wrapped an arm around my shoulders. The parents nearby stood in silence. Even the boy with the tuba stopped packing up his instrument to watch. The next few minutes came to me in pieces. Vanessa, standing alone on the grass, arms crossed, staring down at the ground while her emerald dress moved in the breeze. No one went to her, no one spoke. Rita pulling Gerald toward the parking lot without a word, Gerald following, just like he always had. Neither of them looking back. And the cake, still sitting in the grass near the oak tree.